It was first of all, hi. Thank you for this invitation to present the film. Um, Actually, this film was written like I don't know for 7 years. You know, for a long process. It was a mix of some family memories, not exactly real memories, but some stories I heard about my grandfather. And also, it was a process of writing about my generation in Brazil, the generation that in a way was the first generation who grew up in democracy in Brazil. So who were born in the 80s, 80 something, was like the first generation to grow up and then become adult in democracy. And I had this feeling that I wanted to talk about this, how is to be Brazilian and how is to be on my generation who we believed that the country maybe was finally in democracy and that things was going to be all right and then in the last 7 6 years things started to change and we started to feel that the country was losing again the path to to more democratic society. And I wanted to tell a little bit about this, connecting with the past because it's all the same process in a way. Hmm. I had these two main characters to develop in my mind. Was exactly this imaginary of this grandfather, this white, not rich, but small farmer in the countryside of Brazil, which was based in my grandfather, but also based in stories of other families. And this connection and this opposition with this urban alternative life of this filmmaker, the other character, which becomes the main character in a way, in this dialogue between how present and past they are completely connected. The way that some things that Fernando, the main character, is facing in 2017, 18, 19 now is completely connected with the past of this grandfather, this colonial and post-colonial society, the way that we are still full of ghosts in our street, and every Brazilian body in a way carry this story, even if we don't talk about it all the time, if we don't discuss this in the day by day, and even if sometimes we discuss these things like something that we want to talk, but we don't feel that we don't understand that we completely connect with our flesh, our bones, um, so that's why the main character carries a object that is bone that's connected with the past. Like I like to say that every Brazilian carry a bone in the wrist. Yeah, I think the main. I think we should go very very beyond guilt. I think guilty is not enough. Because guilt is not a proposition of life. It's just trying to finish the sentence again with guilt. Guilty, especially in Brazil, in Portugal, it's a too much Catholic way to answer about things. If you're guilty, you say you're sorry, and then life continues the same. So we don't want. I don't believe that guilt, white guilty, or that's the thing. The thing that I wanted the film to show that it's impossible to escape from history. And even if you feel guilty or you don't feel guilty, we carry this with you and you have to face in the present. And also about reparation, I like it's interesting when you discuss some actions to think about this colonial reparation in a way. But I think the most important thing that we need to face, especially uh, some white elite in Brazil and in Europe in a way in general, there will be no reparation. It's impossible for we to repair what happened in the past in a way because it was too violent. It was too based in genocide and controlling and exploring people. What we should do and we can do, and I think the film is about that. Like we should maybe think that we could understand that every action we have today is still carrying this colonial imaginary, this idea that Europe and whitish culture should is in the center of the planet, and the other cultures and people are around. This we should change, and then this we can change now. It's not about trying to to erase the past and say, okay, now it's repaired. No, it will be never repaired. It's like a big scar that will be always there. So that's the film about. Yes, a little bit. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And even if you act now, you'll be always carrying some mistakes from the past, some things that. So Fernando, the main character in the film, is trying to make a film about his grandfather past, to talk about his violent past, but also when he's doing this, in a way, he's repeating some things from the past, the controlling, trying to control the life, control narrative, say how you should. This is also colonial, because this is something that is very important in Brazil. It's like we are ex-colony from Portugal, but we still have in our society all this colonial way to organize life, not just about the races, white and black people, but especially the way we still think about Brazil as a place to be explored by outside. The idea that Brazil will never have like a cultural language or a possibility of creating a society based also in our complex past. Bolsonaro is in government now, and this proto-fascist man, his main idea is that like Brazil should not be this cultural mess in his mind, and should be organized by a white logic and Christian society, and then the minorities they do whatever they want. But he thinks that the main identity of Brazil should be the whitish Christian way to organize life, and that's what that's why he hates so much black people, LGBT, indigenous people, artists in a way, because we are also always discussing these things. So the film is also to think about how complex is our society and how it would be impossible to try to organize it in this whitish, this whitewashing culture in Brazil. It'd be impossible, and since it's impossible, it's also always be very violent when someone tries to do it, because it's trying to destroy your own body. Like, okay, I don't have black blood in my life. I don't have indigenous culture, and all Brazilians in a way we carry this past. I'm a white man mixed with indigenous and black people. Some There is the black people, there is indigenous people, there are some white people in Brazil. It's not mixed, it's like white, the Italian, Portuguese, but even this 100% white people in Brazil, in the way they speak, the food they eat, the way they move their bodies, they have much more, like indigenous culture, African cultures in the way they behave. And in a lot of time they don't know that, they don't recognize that. You look to a white supposedly white proud people in Brazil, because we have this right wing movement, and you want to look to the guy and say, man, look the way you speak, the way you move your body, the food you're eating. Sorry, man, you're not white. In a way, you're idealizing the idea of being white. So face that too, Mhm. I the film is not exactly about myself. I think in a way it's about my generation, also about this filmmaker generation, because I'm 40 now exactly, and it's exactly the generation of filmmaker who started to film like 20 years ago, started to make some short films, and now 10 years ago started to make features. Like, you have hundreds of filmmakers who had the same story in Brazil in the last 20 years. And you can say you have 50, 100 filmmakers who are like doing it in a kind of career, or like we have several films doing it in the last years. And it's very clear that we all passed through this moment in Brazilian history was in some way we believed that Brazil was finally finding his path to democracy, his path to believe in Brazilian culture. And cinema was also in this process. Like there was a moment that we were like, okay, now Brazil will be finally will be the country of the future because this there is this imaginary in Brazil that the big new culture and nation in the future will be Brazil. It's like since the 40s of the last century. And then in 2010, 2011, we were like, okay, now that's it. We are living the future. We are living the moment that Brazil will be finally central in the planet life and to discuss culture and to discuss society, not just in Brazil, but for the whole planet. And this was also something that we live it as filmmakers, like, oh, we are here now talking about the country that is the center of this possibility of changing. And then it started to fall. So the depression that's connected with this political economy in Brazil is also really connected with the way we are feeling now as artists. You know, we are really a reflection of this moment, not just about money to pay the bills, also about that, but how we represent the country that we believe it was finally finding a democratic language. You know, a cultural language would be really complex as the country is, and now it's losing again, or it's kind of disappearing. Some moments when you are very sad about Brazil, you have the feeling like, oh, Brazil is disappearing, and then you ask, but what which Brazil is that? When we say Brazil is kind of disappearing, what's that? And I think for my generation, that's the big challenge now, like how to deal with this nostalgia about the idea of Brazil that maybe never happened, and maybe will never happen, and how to propose something new, like to propose something that is democratic with more justice and more complexity, but not being nostalgic by the 20th century utopia, because it's really clear now that it was not happening. It was like a fake imaginary of a perfect miscegenous society and so on. It's not. Yeah, my relation with cinema, and I think maybe the reason I fall in love with cinema, you know, when I was starting to maybe try to be a filmmaker, is the I have this feeling that cinema is a kind of time machine. Not in a way just because not in the way that it transports us to the past or the future, but in a way that it can put a lot of times and layers of time together in the same moment, like condensing times. So I really love this possibility of thinking about cinema as this border between reality and dream and different times. And I think this complexity of times together goes to this place where you are in reality, but it's so much condensed different times of reality that you feel like you're dreaming. So my the magical structure in the film in a way is putting together a lot of time possibilities, you know. And I really believe that cinema is a place, a territory where we can be in the past and the future at the same time, not going there and coming back, to be together. And I think in all my films, in a way, I look for this feeling. And in Yellow Animal, Animal Amarelo, is exactly a film about this time traveling, or this time traveling through us, not we traveling time crossing us. And this goes to this magic feeling. But what we call magic is a word to try to say that we are connecting times, and that's I think what cinema can do. And it's not a repetition of life. I don't believe cinema is a repetition of life. It's, even if when I see a really realistic film from some filmmaker who works on that, I really see that and I think, oh, what's beautiful is that this person are trying to fake the idea that this is realism, and it's a kind of, for me, it's a kind of dream, like, oh, they are pretending to be there. It's beautiful. When I had this film, oh, beautiful. Maybe not the reason the filmmaker did the film. He really wanted to repeat life, but I love the idea that they are dreaming about how it could be to be real. So too much. Just to invite you guys to try to see Brazilian cinema. We are really struggling in this moment to fight against this political and this government, the political moment and government that hates culture in general because of its complexity. So pay attention. I think we are still gonna make some Brazilian films in the next years, surviving in a way, trying to put together the forces and the ideas. So it's very important to let our films travel because it's a way to also put a little bit of buzz, in this idea that the country is controlled by them, this fascist government. They are trying to control us in a very violent way, but we are still here.